Before we could leave for Milan, Michigan on Saturday morning, we needed a U-joint from Mark at A1. So Jeremy made a deal with him he'd bring him donuts if Mark would come in and meet him early.
So I get a call last night from Uncle Bucko, and he said there's a 911 and he needs to meet me here at 7 o'clock.
It's a good thing Mark sweetened the deal with donuts because Jeremy was late.
Door's locked. Service! Got shit to do, Philip. I got your damn donuts. Alright, well, you got it. You got your damn donuts. Happy?
Day's good.
Yeah, my hell is just beginning.
Well, we'll get through it. They're leaving in a little bit anyway, so you probably better get your...
They always say that, and it's always about 5 hours after their leaving destination.
No.
After he picked up that universal joint for Billy's dually down at Mark's, he came back to the shop and got straight to work replacing it out in the driveway. Meanwhile, Tommy and Allison are on their way with the Dart, and they're going to load it up on the back end of Billy's tandem car trailer behind the Falcon, and I'll pull both of them up with my old Chevy dually. Allison plans on running her Dart in the daily driver class so long as we can make it in time for the cruise, which right now isn't looking good. In order for us to make it to Milan Dragway on time this morning, we're definitely going to have to hustle. So the instant that Jeremy finished putting the U-joint in Billy's drive shaft, the truck got dropped in gear and it was headed around the circle driveway. Me, June, and Chevy were already loaded up in my dually, but we were waiting on Vicky to get done in the bathroom before we could leave. Once we finally had her loaded up, it was time for everybody to turn and burn north up to the Ohio-Michigan state line, where we found ourselves bogged down in some traffic in a construction zone, where everyone managed to get stopped except me, hence the big dent in the back of the trailer. Luckily, the damage to the trailer was minimal, and the rest of our trip to the track was uneventful. Once we made it through the front gate, we got the cars parked, found a pit spot, and started unloading everything, and then went up to take a look at the track. Then that's when we found out they're moving the starting line back onto the rubber, which we thought initially was going to be a really good thing. While we were busy checking out the track surface, Allison was busy getting ready for the cruise in her Dart for the daily driver class. She went up to the Detroit Hood TV tent, paid her entry fee, and joined everybody for the cruise that left just before first round of small tire. Now the surface here at Milan Dragway is pretty challenging, especially in the left-hand lane. Typically the left lane's 2 to 3/10 slower. So when we found out they were moving the starting line back onto the rubber, we were pretty excited that both lanes would be more even. But there was another problem that we didn't see coming. With everyone pouring puddles of their favorite traction compound that's typically designed to break down the rubber in the tire, it's also breaking down the rubber on the track as well as the track surface itself. Initially, we thought we'd be able to 60-foot really hard here today, but after about the first 6 or 8 pairs, that was clearly not the case. Unfortunately, our day was over by second round for both the Nova and the Falcon. The Falcon basically just got outpowered by John Quick's Mustang, but the Nova, on the other hand, had some serious issues with suspension, and Billy was determined to get to the bottom of it first thing Sunday morning. Billy's Nova hasn't quite been the same since that parachute got a hold of the nose of the car at War in the Woods and spun him around. He made some suspension adjustments that made the car plant the tire better and 60 foot better than it ever has on a backside, but the car has been trying to drive left ever since it spun out. Billy and I worked on the car almost all day on Father's Day, and we came back to the shop after dinner to unload the Dart so Allison and Tommy could take the car home with them. They'll have a video up soon on Gen 2 Garage of Allison's first nitrous passes with the new Isky camshaft in her 340. So that brings us to Monday morning when we started to assess all the damage from our trip to Milan, Michigan. All in all, this could have been a lot worse. Honestly, the most critical damage was to the rear suspension on the Falcon, but even that damage is pretty minimal, and we'll have it fixed in no time. While we're all busy working on that stuff at my shop, Jeremy's up at the farm trying to keep my dad from killing himself.
Dumb ways to die.
Jeremy helped Dad get his Woods mower hooked to his John Deere A, and then Jeremy headed north up to Delaware to pick up parts for me. The 55 Chevy's push rods are a little bit too long, and the only push rods available were up at the warehouse in Delaware. So while Jeremy's up there picking up parts for me, Kenny's back at my shop taking the vintage air kit out of the boxes and getting everything ready to start installing it in the 55. I, on the other hand, have a special delivery for Uncle Bob. My head gaskets came in and I need to take them up to the machine shop so Bob can finish putting my 421 back together for the Malibu. Thankfully, while we were waiting on head gaskets, he's had plenty of other work to keep him busy. But today his main focus is trying to get my engine finished up so I can take it home and put it back in my car. The short block was already finished by the time I got there. As soon as I walked in the door, Bob started laying the head gaskets out and putting the cylinder heads on my engine. Once he had the head gaskets torqued down, it was time to start putting the valve train back in the engine and adjusting the guide plates to make sure that the rocker arms line up properly on the valve stems. The next step was to adjust the valves and set preload on all the hydraulic roller lifters, then fill the crankcase with motor oil and prime the engine with a priming tool to assure that we've got proper oil pressure and proper lubrication to all the valve train components. Next up was setting the intake gaskets up on the cylinder heads and putting the intake manifold back on the engine. Bob carefully lays a bead of silicone across each end of the block to seal the lifter valley before setting the intake on and bolting the lift plate on so we can pick the engine up with the shop crane and load it in the back of the 64. I backed the truck in underneath the shop crane and Bob and Nick set the engine down on the bed and closed the tailgate for me. By this time it was getting pretty late in the afternoon and I wanted to try and get this engine back to my shop and get it painted before Kenny Powers goes home for the day. So when I stopped at Utica at the traffic light, I called Kenny and said, "Hey, I'm about 35 minutes out and I'm coming in hot. Get the cherry picker ready so when I back in, we can get this thing unloaded, get it masked up, cleaned up, and get a fresh coat of Chevy orange on it before we close up shop for the day." So that brings us to Tuesday morning, and the plan was for Bucko to get started on this thing bright and early.
So first things first, before we put the engine in, the converter bolt holes are a little worn. I wanted to try to clean those up, so I looked at my Chumpy tap set here and realized I don't have that tap. Checked with my brothers too, don't have it over there either. APR head stud, cut me some cutting grooves in the side of these threads. Shine them up a little bit, tap them out.
While Bucko's busy making his own thread chaser, he found some other homemade tools.
You ever heard that song, Dumb Ways to Die? Well, here's one. I guess this is like a combo of death. Let's see, I want to remove my head gasket, and just in case, I want to cut some grooves in it too while I'm doing it. Or if I just want to eat a grinder blade when the ray lock fails.
Stay tuned, folks. This little bit isn't over by a long shot.
So right off the rip today, I got the flywheel on, motor mount bolts on. Went to go check out the converter and check the bolts in the converter. And I had a problem with this one. It had been cross-threaded at one time, probably in one of our big hurries to get it done. So I drilled this out to 29/64. I put a helicoil in it for a 7/16 by 20. I got that done, and then I went over here and I clearanced out the holes for the converter bolts so we don't have that problem, because this thing was really tight and that's how the bolts got screwed up.
Jeremy's been complaining about the converter bolts not fitting right since forever. I can't remember a time when he wasn't complaining about something, but the converter bolts, yeah, he's been worried about that for a while.
So, Mr. Powers, how'd you like them torque converter bolts?
Went pretty smooth.
Compared to all the other times?
Right themselves.
Went in slicker and snail snot, didn't it?
Yeah, hope they don't come back out.
Yeah, they won't. You Loctited them in there. That's what happens when you take your time and make shit right. It goes smooth.
So while Bucko's down at my shop helping Kenny put the engine back in my Malibu, I'm headed north out of Granville for a meeting at a body shop up near Utica. The shop is called House of Pearls, and I came across these folks about 6 months ago. There's 3 people that basically run the shop. There's Paul, Jesse, and Nikki. They've all been friends since high school, And for the past 7 years, they've been busy building up their business and their reputation for full-on restorations and custom body and paint. Paul's primary focus is bodywork and paint. And today he's working on painting the hood for this 1955 Chevy Napco four-wheel drive pickup, House of Color, Candy Brown. Paul has the hood in the downdraft paint booth, and he's getting ready to spray the base coat on. House of Color Candy Brown starts with a black base coat, then the Candy Brown sprayed over top of that. Paul lays out the black base coat very carefully, very evenly over the primer. Once the base coat has had about 30 minutes to flash, Paul starts spraying the brown color over the black base, first around the edges and then over the top of the hood. 30 minutes after that, it's time to start mixing clear and laying the clear coat down. As any professional generally would, Paul makes his job look extremely simple. I can assure you, it's anything but. While he's finishing up in the paint booth laying the clear out on that hood, Jesse's out in the shop working on a square body Chevy pickup truck cab. Jesse primarily works on sheet metal fabrication and welding. Today, he's focused on putting new rockers and new cab corners, as well as new floor pans, in this old 79 Chevy truck cab. And like Paul, Jesse makes his job look very simple. And that's because Jesse is not simply a patch panel technician. He was responsible for taking a two-piece hood on this 1946 Chevy Suburban and turning it into a one-piece with billet hood hinges. He also built a custom bolt-in removable firewall. This is probably the only 1946 Chevy truck in the world built like this. Regardless of how good the custom fabrication and paint work is, it's all for nothing if you don't have somebody that can cut and buff like a professional. And that's where Nikki comes in. Nikki is Paul's fiancée, and according to Paul, Nikki is the entire reason that House of Pearls exists today. She talked Paul into starting this business over 7 years ago, and there's no turning back now. Paul taught her the basics of wet sanding, buffing, and polishing. But now, Nikki has far exceeded even Paul's abilities. For an example, check out the bed on this beautiful 79 Dodge half-ton four-wheel drive pickup that she just finished wet sanding and polishing yesterday. Her attention to detail is unparalleled. I was absolutely astonished. So it's the three of you guys, right?
Yes,
The
sir.
three amigos.
Well, we have, that's currently right now. We have a couple other guys that are here like part-time / full-time. But the two of them do their own detailing thing, so they're
I got
right
you.
now doing
I
that.
got
But,
you.
yeah, we have other guys that help us, but
So you primarily do what? Paint, body work?
Yep, paint and final body work, stuff like that. Yeah.
Jesse? He's the fab guy.
Sheet metal, build anything. Yeah, you need something built custom,
I'll figure it out.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And Nikki.
Yep, I do pretty much all the paint correction, wet sand, buff. I can do body work and pretty much except everything but paint.
She's the one who pretty
Welding.
much makes us all look good.
Yeah.
So she goes over everything and makes it all perfect. So that's really what makes us stand out.
So here's the situation. Everything I own needs painted. Literally everything.
We're down.
So
that.
it would be easier if you guys could come down to my place and look at everything like at one time maybe.
Yeah.
And then, because otherwise I got to drag everything up here one at a time.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, that might be. How much
We'll
is
come to
everything?
you.
How much is everything?
There's quite a bit. Yeah, there's quite a
No,
bit.
I want to come down and see the
Yeah.
Okay.
anyway, so.
Absolutely.
So maybe this coming weekend you guys come down and visit with us, and
That'd be awesome.
I'll show you around. And I think the first car I want to try is the Nova.
The red and black one.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the first classics
We did.
we did.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Yep.
So I'll have you
awesome.
guys
Yeah,
come down and look at it, and like the 55 Chevy, my Malibu. I'd like to my Malibu is 35,000 original miles, but it's still got the original lacquer, and it's starting to check and crack. You know.
They all do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to have it done nice
Awesome.
because it's such a nice car. But so
Sounds good.
I'll see you
Exciting.
guys maybe this weekend.
Thank you
Sounds
for the
good to
opportunity.
me. Thank
Taylor.
you so much.
Thank you.
So last night after I got home from House of Pearls, Jeremy, Kenny, and Billy finished up putting the engine down in my Malibu and got it running. However, today we're working on the 55. We need to get this engine in that.
Just put the engine in that.
Well, yeah, but now we got to get this engine in that immediately, if not sooner. Need you to get that cross shaft dealt with, whatever we got to do to fix that clutch. Remember that? Because we put power steering on it. So we need to get these valves adjusted, get the intake on it, put the lift plate on, and get it set down in the 55. Let's find out what we got to do with the clutch. I know I've got a brand new flywheel here, but let's look at the pressure plate. I don't know, it don't look too bad. I think it'll be okay. That's the old flywheel, we can't use that one.
That goes in my archive then.
All right, so this 400 is externally balanced, so it has its own special external balancer, harmonic balancer, and it has external balanced flywheel, which is laying back there in a box. This is an internally balanced flywheel, which you are not to use on that.
I can use it.
Well, you can use it on something else, but this one has to have an external balance. So, let's see. We've got intake gaskets. I think I need to go down to Mark's and get some silicone. So I guess that's going to be my test drive for the old Malibruiser.
Good, maybe you'll leave me alone now. You got something to play with. Try not to break it.
Last night when we pulled this thing in, I gave it a bath before we put the engine in it. So I've got the car all cleaned up, and by the time we had it running, it was pouring down rain. So this is going to be my first opportunity to drive the Malibu since we put the engine all back together. Now, the last time we had the Malibu out, we were down at National Trail Raceway when Jimmy Dale was here. I let him take it down to National Trail Raceway and make his very first quarter-mile pass ever. Now, at the time, I had no idea it had one hurt piston in it. You would have never known. It sounded perfectly fine, and Jimmy made 3 consecutive 1050 at 126 mile-an-hour passes. But according to the air fuel gauge, the car was leaning out making quarter-mile runs with a mechanical fuel pump. And ultimately, those lean conditions going quarter-mile is what took care of the number 6 piston, which I had evidently hurt the weekend before at the JaxWax Street Madness Event, putting 350 horse worth of nitrous to this thing on pump E85. And although I won both grudge races that night against a Coyote Mustang with a supercharger and a Big Block Malibu with nitrous, I ended up paying the price for it 3 or 4 weeks later. Anyway, the Malibu's first test drive went just fine. I went down to Mark's, picked up some shop supplies, and brought them back about the time Kenny Powers was laying a fresh coat of silver paint on my old Team G intake for the 55. Jeremy had all the valves adjusted, and we mocked up this carburetor to see if the carburetor studs would work, and then we started mounting all the brackets and found out that the harmonic balancer would not clear the motor mounts or the new power steering bracket. Once they were clearanced, Kenny painted them, and then it was time to start bolting all the accessory drives on to see how we were going to mock up the air conditioning compressor, the power steering pump, heater hose fittings, and we also need to take measurements for the drive belts. The old generator will be replaced with a new Power Master alternator, and a new cold case aluminum radiator should keep the engine cool. All right, everybody, welcome back to the shop. So as you can see, the Malibu's back together. We're making progress on the 55. The 400's sitting here with most of the accessory drive on it. We've still got a handful of little things to do. We're probably going to have to modify a couple things. I'm not real happy with the power steering bracket. It doesn't seem to line up very well. I got to look into that. We still need to modify the cross shaft for the clutch linkage. And we got to run all new brake lines because this car originally had a single bale master cylinder, and now it's got power disc brakes with the updated dual reservoir master. So really excited this weekend. We're staying home. We're taking the weekend off, and everybody from House of Pearls is coming down to look at my Nova, Billy's Nova, the 55, my Malibu, the Falcon. Like, everything we own needs paint and body work. And I've really been looking for some place to work with locally. And when I found House of Pearls, I was like, wow, that's actually, it's right on the way up to Bob's. Like, I go past it every time I go to Bob's, and I didn't even know there was a body shop there. I've met with these people 2 or 3 times over the last week, And I'm very, very, very happy with what I've seen so far and how they work together, how they communicate together, and the level of craftsmanship and workmanship is just absolutely amazing. They're young people full of energy. They love what they're doing. They love each other. And I just feel like it's the perfect fit. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just, I don't know. I really get a good feeling dealing with those people up there, talking to them, spending some time with them in the shop and videoing how they do everything. And it's really, really cool. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think we're going to start with my Nova first, see how that goes. And then of course the 55. And part of the reason for that is my mom and dad are very particular about who works on this car. You know, they've had it since 1974. And I am too, don't get me wrong. But I feel like mom and dad would be a lot more comfortable after seeing not only the work that's obviously in this video, but the work that they can do on my Nova. And the Nova, it's just a Nova, right? I mean, it's not a 55 Chevy Bel Air two-door sedan. Like, that's the cream of the crop around here as far as I'm concerned. So we'll start with the Nova. We'll see how that goes. I'm pretty sure it's going to go very well. And, you know, Billy's Nova also needs a lot of work done to it. Everything, like the Falcon really deserves to have some work done. The Falcon really deserves to have the body restored on it. It's an awfully good car, and I don't think we're going to ever let go of that thing. I'd really like to see something done with the Falcon too. So I don't know. I'm really excited about the body work, and I'm excited for those guys to come down and visit with us this weekend. Like I said, we're taking the weekend off. The giveaway Mustang, congratulations to the fellow that won that. I can't remember his name. Alan something. I can't remember. Alan, if you're watching, thank you for your support. Congratulations. I think Alan's coming up this weekend. He lives in Cincinnati. He's a registered nurse. He's in his mid-30s, and he does have a G-body race car. So he's a Chevy guy, but he's taking a Ford home. So congratulations to him, and thank you to everybody who supported the giveaway, who bought merch on streetracingchannel.com. Greatly appreciate that. It's helped us tremendously. We're going to start working towards some other projects. Of course, the new shop is coming, and there's a whole lot of really good things coming, guys. And we really appreciate everybody who watches and likes and shares and comments and subscribes and supports our family. So that's it for tonight, guys. I'm going to hop off here, get this video uploaded. We'll see you maybe in a couple days.